Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Soulful Hunter podcast. I am your host, Johnny Mack. Through this podcast, I am on a mission to transform lives through primal adventure and to spread my mission of mentorship is conservation. This podcast is powered by Washington Backcountry, a resource for all hunters new and old. To find out more about Washington Backcountry, go to wabackcountry.com or search for Washington Backcountry on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Soulful Hunter podcast. Today I got a special episode with you. It is with Dylan Dowson of OnX Maps, and they are just doing incredible things in the world of hunting, a complete game changer for me and my journey of getting into hunting. Once I learned about OnX and how to find public lands, it absolutely blew my mind and revolutionized my hunting abilities. So today I'm joined with Dylan here at the Hunt Expo, and Dylan, thanks for joining us, man.
Yeah, thanks for having us on. It's day 4 of the Hunt Expo, and it's nice to sneak away for an hour and jump on a podcast. It's been a busy trade show season, but it's been good talking to a lot of customers and answering a few questions and getting a lot of feedback. So it's been good.
How many people do you have coming by the booth that have never even heard of OnX?
There's not many, and that's one nice thing about these trade shows. It's more like a Q&A with our customers, letting our customers know, about our support team back in Montana, answering a few questions. There are still a few people who stop by and ask us, what is OnX Maps? But all in all, it's pretty substantial, the number of people that have it and use it and love it. It's more so, positive feedback, swinging by the booth, showing us photos from the year before, and without this product, there's no way that this hunt would have happened, that type of stuff. So it's really positive.
Yeah. It's really cool. I'm a believer in OnX. I've reached out to you guys because I really love what you do. You guys support me and you support the community. So when we do social events, you're giving memberships for us to give away. And dude, we just super appreciate it and thank you for that. For all the people who've never heard of OnX and don't know exactly what it is, take us through it.
Yeah. So essentially, what it does, it's a phone application that turns your smartphone or tablet into a handheld GPS unit. So you get the app downloaded on your phone. It'll show you private boundaries. It'll show you the private owners for those parcels there. It'll show you where all the public is, breaks it down by BLM, state, forest, etc. So that's kind of the main part is it turns your phone into a GPS. It'll show you exactly where you're at on the map. So you can find those access points into public, tons of hunt-specific data, the hunt game management unit boundaries, just a lot of information there. You can mark waypoints, you can track yourself, you can share waypoints, a lot of detailed information. But yeah, to kind of break it down from a 10,000-foot level is, it's an app that turns your phone into a full-functioning GPS. Don't need service out of, works with and without a cell service. So
yeah, being new to hunting, relatively new, I guess now I've been in it 5 years, but I always thought that if you hunted, you had to have a Garmin Rhino or you can't hunt without a GPS, or at least this is like some idea that I created in my head. So you guys just really, everyone carries a cell phone, combine the two. Bam.
Yeah, and so we actually started out with a chip for those Garmin GPS units, and that was a couple-year project, and then we started working on the phone application. But what that chip would do, you plug that into your Garmin GPS, essentially would show you the same boundaries, unit boundaries, private, public, etc. But yeah, we realized, everybody's walking around with their smartphones these days, and the technology is so advanced now that, we started working on an application, and in the past, 3 to 4 years, the offline capabilities and just the phone's technology and everything really allows us to not really need the GPS units anymore. I personally sold mine about 2 years ago because it became just a weight in my pack.
A little antiquated, huh?
Yeah, exactly. So, no, with today's technologies, it's not necessary. We do still sell the chips, for folks that are stuck with the GPS and glued to their hand. Yeah,
right. Yeah, the guys that have the ones that it's a radio also, they don't want to just leave it at home. So that's super cool. All right, so I got into OnX, started to learn, the first 2 questions here, Soulful Hunter, Washington Backcountry, we do a lot of hunting 101 stuff. The main 2 questions that I get from new hunters or people who Washington's really big in military, certain areas. And so we get guys who are like, I'm from Oklahoma. All I've ever hunted is whitetail and pigs. I don't know this Western style of hunting. They reach out. They're like, how do I find places to hunt? And so the very first question I actually ask them is, do you have OnX? So the questions I get is, how do you find land to hunt? And then how do you find the animals
Yeah.
to then pursue? And so you guys really single-handedly answered that. And in our Hunting 101 series, I actually wrote an article and included a link to your guys' stuff because I believe it's that powerful. So you guys break it down. It's really expanded over the last couple of years. So before, in my user ability, it was GMUs, it was looking for trails, you get your topographical, but also your satellite, different stuff like that. What else is OnX doing that is really expanding the game for people?
Yeah, so I mean, we're always working on the next best thing as far as feature wise. First and foremost, though, like our data is our number one priority. So we've got a big GIS team back in Montana, and we actually work with the counties that we receive the data from. Make sure that they're updating it on their end. We update about once a year. So our first and foremost, our biggest push is making sure we have the most up to date, accurate data at all times. Beyond that, we are working on some features as far as like that data that's going to help folks find new areas, find where they can and can't hunt. As you said, somebody that moved out to a different state, not familiar. We've got like hunt game management unit boundaries that really, lays it out. So if you tap anywhere within that map, more information will come up there, and you can actually get linked right to the websites, fish and game websites that will let you know, this is a draw unit, this is a general unit, here's how you apply.
Yeah.
Kind of just it's a easy barrier to entry, as you said there.
Yep.
A lot of data in there, so
It can be a little overwhelming for that first time user, like trying to figure out what it is that you're even looking at, and with that, trying to figure out how to find animals amongst everything else. One thing that was really cool, I had a real cool personal experience when I was on a bear hunt 2 years ago, and I had OnX, and we're out, man, we were deep in the backcountry, and pulled up OnX from a pre-downloaded map because you guys, that's one of the cool features that you guys go offline and you can take your maps with you. And I was like, well, there's a trail here. I'm like, I can't see it. We're in deep, thick berries and woods. And I was like, okay, well, let's work towards it. It's got to be something. And literally, we just climbed up this hillside, and it got to a point where we were even having to use our hands to like get up this hillside. And what'd you know? It was a little overgrown, but there was a trotting trail right there. And I was like, what the heck? Man, like I don't know, to the feet, to the yard of accuracy. So
yeah,
I was impressed.
No, same thing here. We've been on packouts, packing out an elk or something, and then pull up the app, and like if we just went 50 yards one way or the other, we'd be on an old logging road or a trail or something. Just saves hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey man, there's a reason why trails are a lot easier to use. So
yeah, it's a reason the animals use them.
Right. So one of the things that I do, so here's a little tip for all you Washington people, and it might extend to other states as well. But before I was a hunter, I was a hiker. And so in the state of Washington, there's the Washington Trails Association, WTA website. And on there, it's trail reports,
Okay.
different destinations, mileage, elevation, how to get there. And so when I was starting to do a lot of my scouting on OnX, I'd see a trail. I wouldn't know the name of it, but I would find like a peak or a river or a creek, and I'd Google. I can't even think of the name, nor do I necessarily want to say like a specific one. But
say if you could.
Yeah, let's say like Lone Peak Trail. And so if there was a trail near a peak that said Lone Peak, I'd say Lone Peak Trails WTA. And all of a sudden, I'm getting a trail report from the hiker's perspective. Now, obviously, you got to get off trail a little bit when you're hunting, but that was also in combination with you guys, like absolutely game changer.
Extremely helpful information. And as you said there, the key is the hiker part of it. Hikers are very open to sharing that information.
Yep.
Whereas, if there was a hunting website where you were to go tell about the trails and information, there would be nobody on it because nobody's gonna say,
Right.
yeah, or it was, impossible trail.
Yeah.
Don't go up there.
Right.
So
So there you go. So that's something is like cross reference.
Yep.
Get a lot of different avenues and angles. There's a funny, interesting video on YouTube. It talks about perspectacles.
yeah,
You gotta have the right type of glasses and take a look at it from a different perspective, and really opens your eyes.
yeah.
So, what is some of the key features that you really recommend, especially on how to find animals? So we know now how to find the public land because OnX lists it,
Mhm.
public, private, wildlife refuge, all the way to DNR, BLM, you name it.
Yeah.
What are some of the key features you use in order to help find yourself animals within your mapping software?
Yeah. So, I mean, first and foremost, we work with a lot of great folks. Randy Newberg, the hunting public, the list goes on and on of just ambassadors that we're fortunate enough to have relationships with. And in doing so on our YouTube and on our website. So, Randy Newberg, for example, we have an entire YouTube series with him on how to e-scout for elk.
Yeah.
So, in this series, it breaks it down, incredibly in depth of how to find elk in this unit versus this unit, what to look for based on time of year, rut period, north facing slopes, old burn. He goes into great detail. So for anybody who's like really looking at diving in and spending a few hours digging into this,
Yeah.
I definitely push them to our YouTube and look for the Randy Newberg series there, and then mapping whitetails with the hunting public. They kind of did a similar thing, but for whitetails. So where I'm looking at setting a tree stand, or the movements during the rut, and kind of just looking for that type of information.
Yeah.
But for me personally, I mean, obviously a lot of it depends on the species, the time of year, etc. So like early season elk in Montana. I'm a Montana resident, always have been. So we're extremely fortunate to have long seasons, very, lots of elk, deer, antelope, bear, lots of different species. But for elk early season, I'm going to be looking at our topo map. So we have aerial imagery, topographic, and a hybrid of the two. And so that's kind of the base map there. And then on top of that is the layers. So there's the private, the private we talked about, the public lands, the game management units, burn layer we can throw on there, roadless layer.
Talk about the burn layer a little bit. So
Yeah.
obviously, like you hear Randy Newberg always talking about burns and
Mhm.
stuff like that. And for the new hunters who are listening to this, burns are great because that's where the new growth is.
Yep.
That's where the feed is for the animals. So when you guys introduced the burns, it was a real that's relatively
Yeah.
new, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, within the last few years.
Yeah.
And that's, working with folks like that, we do realize that burns are important. Randy really hammers on the burn layer and, finding elk in those sanctuaries and the burns. But yeah, no, that is a relatively new feature. I use it a ton.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where you can customize the map. So if you don't use it, I talked to somebody yesterday who had it on and didn't realize wasn't useful for their application. So then you just go in and turn that layer off. So, you turn it on, turn it off, depending on what you want to see. But so that burn layer, it shows backdated burns. We also have a current wildfire layer.
Mhm.
So, in July, August, when wildfires are happening, we update that one very frequently. And so day to day, you can see like where the fires are.
I didn't know that. That's interesting. Yeah.
It might be in an area that you're planning on going hunting, so you need to know for safety features.
Mhm.
B, obviously that fire is going to displace animal movement, and just it's interesting to watch.
Dude, that's super cool.
Yeah, so we've got the current wildfires and then the historic wildfires. The historic wildfires will show you which date it was. So, it'll say like 2017 for this fire, 20, 2009 for this fire, etc.
Right.
So what that does, and Randy goes into far greater depth in that YouTube series, but, obviously a new burn. So if we had a really hot burn last year, say, there will start to be some growth, but it's going to be pretty charred. Like it's, there's going to still be some animal movement in there, but you're going to approach that differently than you would a 3-year-old burn. A 3 to 4-year-old burn probably has had time to come back lush green, regrowth, not super thick, kind of a good spot to start looking for elk.
Yeah, man, that is so cool. What are some of your favorite layers that you use?
The burn one is one of them for sure. Beyond that, I mean, obviously, I'd say 90% of people get on X strictly for the private public. So we've got some fancy layers and whatnot, but always that private public for me because in Montana we're very checkerboardy, and a lot of the places that I hunt don't even have fence lines.
Mm-hmm.
So with looking at the app and seeing my location with that, I can feel confident going through a piece that's a quarter mile wide or even a couple hundred yards wide that doesn't have fence lines saying what's private, what's public.
Right.
So I mean, I always revert back to the private public just because I need to know exactly where I'm at.
Right.
And the private layers got me access on some spots just by knocking on doors, being ready with a name.
Yep.
And then also there's been a few times where they're like, I usually let people, but I had some issues last year with my neighbor, the people cross over to the neighbors, didn't realize, and we had some issues, so we're just shutting it down this year.
Dude, that's good perspective.
Yeah. And so, immediately you pull up the app and it's like, hey, so just so you're aware, I know exactly where we're at. I can see that boundary, zoom in and you can see like a tree and be like, oh yeah, that's right there. And instantly they're like, oh yeah, no, you can totally go hunt. Good luck.
I can trust this person. They
Yeah.
have, yeah. What's funny is I moved into a new house this last summer, and my real estate agent
Oh yeah.
uses OnX. Turns out that not just for hunters, if you are a real estate agent, and actually one of the first guys that I took out when I mentored hunting, Sean, he sells a lot of windows and stuff like that. He used your landowner information to gain more sales in his business because he already knew names.
Yeah.
And he could go to the door and it was like,
yeah,
it blew me away.
It's crazy just, somebody opening a door and starting the conversation with, hey, Mr. Smith, or, whatever it is. It's just like a trust that's started for some reason. And
right.
Yeah, it is helpful. I know a lot of folks that use it for real estate, for, surveying, for just everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Did you use OnX on your hunt this last year where you smoked that giant bull?
I did quite a bit.
Yeah.
So that
take us through that.
Yeah. So I was, fortunate enough to go on a hunt with the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. Through OnX, we've been partners with RMEF for, 10 plus years, and they had an opening and invited me on this hunt. It worked out perfectly. I had the right tag at the right time, and got a little lucky there. But yeah, so it was a little bit different of an elk hunt in the sense of, usually I'm in Western Montana hunting 100% public land, looking for elk anywhere.
Yeah.
Weekend warrior along with everybody else.
Dude,
and just trying to get after
struggle is real.
It is real. But yeah, so we went out more towards central Montana, and we're hunting some public, some private, and the app was crucial in that. Just like I said, they're obtaining permission. It's like, okay, well, you can hunt this private, but you can't hunt the neighbor's private because they lease or they have hunters or so on and so forth. So not only, am I looking at my phone constantly to make sure I'm not trespassing onto private, I'm looking at my phone constantly to make sure that we're, not trespassing on the neighbor's private, even if you're currently on private. So still definitely had to know where we were at. And then as far as like that hunt specifically, we were kind of playing like, it was kind of cat and mouse with the elk herd. It wasn't super thick. It was a little bit more open country. So you can't just really hear a bugle and charge in there and try and call them in and get them fired up. We had to be a little bit more strategic. And so with that came a lot of detailed planning with the imagery. So we would glass up the herd of elk, right? And then we'd look at the phone and be like, okay, well, they're right here. We are, 3/4 of a mile here. Where's like some drainages, where's some topography that between us and them that can cut that distance a little bit. And so we're looking a lot with the aerial imagery to pinpoint exactly where they were, where we were, obviously, and then switching over to like the topo and being like, okay, well, there's a creek that runs behind them. The wind's going this way. I think we can get down there and cut the distance by half and see what they do from there.
Yeah. Dude, that's sweet.
Yeah. So it was, it was a little bit different use of it. But we were constantly marking waypoints of where we last seen them. We'd hear bugle, pull up the app, and be like, okay, that bull's definitely on the neighboring property. We'll have to wait this out and see what they do.
Yeah.
A lot of playing the wind too. So it's like, well, that creek drainage runs right up there. We could snake up in there, but usually, the thermals at this time of day are are doing this, so we better hold off. And it was just a lot more of like a cat and mouse approach, calling a little bit, but
yeah,
we use the app quite a bit still.
Man, that's so cool. A lot of ambush tactics because you have the app and you're able to put that to use.
Yeah, it was a lot of trying to get in front of them.
Yeah. Do you typically download your offline maps in more of a high res, or do you do like the medium or the low?
Yeah, so we get that question quite a bit at this show. We've gotten it a lot. It's one of those things. So we've got 3 different options. When you download a map, first and foremost, you're going to want to do it while you're at home off Wi-Fi, while you're sitting on the couch prepping, and you get all your gear ready the day before, the week before, a month before a season if you're like me, and it's just one of those things you have to be aware of saving maps too. Yeah. I've been guilty of it myself, of halfway to my hunting spot and I realize I didn't save a map. Oh, yeah. So I'm getting better at it, obviously, but it happens to everybody.
Right.
And so you want to make sure to save those maps before you head out into the field, obviously. But so for me personally, we've got a 5-mile wide, a 10-mile, and a 150. The 150-mile map obviously is going to give you a ton of area, but when you zoom in on that map, you're not going to get like super clean, crisp aerial imagery. You're still going to be able to see things like private and public, the roads, the game management units, etc. But you're not going to get like that super detailed topo or super detailed information. So what I do personally is I've got the entire state of Montana saved with 150s. So I think that probably took 7 or 8 maps or so. So no matter what, no matter where I end up, even if I do forget to save a map, or if I end up going outside of a saved map, going to a new area, I at least have something. I've got roads. I've got, okay, well, that's public and that's private. I might not be able to see the private owner's name on that 150-mile map, but I'll be able to know it's private.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then within that, so like I'll save a bunch of 150s. Within that, I'll zoom in areas that I'm specifically going. I usually save 10s.
I do the same.
Yeah, the 5-mile map is perfect for, customers who, they've got 50 acres that they're hunting in Kansas. And
like the back 40 guys.
Exactly.
Yep.
And, I still know a lot of Western hunters that save a lot of 5-mile maps because they want to be able to zoom in and see like the cleanest aerial imagery possible.
Right.
They want to be able to see, if that spring has water in it at that time of year when the imagery was taken, or if it's dry, that type of stuff. With the 10s, you can about get there. So for me, a 10 is a good compromise of, I get a little bit more bang for my buck as far as a little bit more area saved, but it still gives me really detailed imagery, detailed enough for what I need offline. And you can save multiple maps. So my map right now is just cluttered with saved maps. I've got, probably 6, 7, 8, 10-mile maps saved next to each other in areas.
Same. And you know what the worst part is I don't label my offline maps well enough to all of a sudden like, oh, crap. And
what's
scroll
that one?
And be like, okay, is this it? No, dang it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's one thing we recommend too, is especially with that, I've got a ton of saved maps. I don't usually resave every single time, but we always recommend like each year before folks go out there, just delete and resave your maps.
Because of the updates.
Yep, we update constantly.
Man, that makes sense. I never even thought about that.
And a lot of it, if you're hunting up in national forest, and it's a big chunk of public.
Yep, not a lot's going to change.
Yeah, probably nothing's going to change. So you're probably okay. But with that being said, if you're like on the border or new hunting units or just anything like that, just be aware of, you will want to resave those maps, before you head out into the field.
You just blew my mind. I'm going to go ahead and go through all my saved maps and like reevaluate what's going on.
And too, I mean, we always make improvements. So like last year, for example, when you save a map, the layers all save with it. So you can turn the layers on and off. Even if the layer was turned off when you save that map, you're fine. You're still covered. You can still turn it on. Where previously, a couple years ago, if you say I forgot to turn on the public lands layer before I save that map, well, my save map doesn't have access to that public lands layer. Right. So, we're always making updates and improvements. So if you resave once a year, you'll be in good shape.
That is awesome. You guys are really good at consumer feedback. That's one thing I've noticed is always emails like, hey, what do you guys think of this? And stuff like that. Your customer service is off the charts.
Yeah.
You guys really put a lot into that, and it's super cool to hear. One of the coolest features, sharing waypoints.
Yep.
So originally that sharing waypoints was like mind blowing. That was one of the things that I would advertise for you guys was like, oh, do you have OnX? Okay, here's a waypoint. Like, this is what you're looking for. So it's, pull up a random like spot on a mountain that was north facing or
Yeah.
south facing, whatever
Yeah.
animal we're talking about. Be like, this is what you're looking at if I wasn't with them in person.
Yeah.
And so I'd send it to them, and then they open it up, and it's right there. That's super cool. You guys now are updated your features where you can send multiple waypoints at one time, or how's that work?
We're working on that as we speak, and back to your feedback comment, and that's a big reason we're at this show specifically too. Especially with most people already having OnX, it's okay, what do you want as a hunter that we don't have? Most of the time, people think about it a second, and they're like, I think we've got everything, we're covered. But once in a while, we get some really good feedback at shows and just in general, calling customer service, etc. We are working on the ability to share multiple waypoints or tracks, just more content sharing as we speak. But yeah, right now, one of the big improvements is, there for a while when you'd share a waypoint, your notes wouldn't transfer, the name, etc. So all that's transferred now. If I change my waypoint color to blue and put an elk icon in there and name it, Elk Wallow 1, when I share you that waypoint, all that data transfers with it. And so, we made some improvements there, and also I can revoke access. So if I share you my waypoint and you tell everybody where that waypoint is, I can go in and say, nope.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. So, we can
does
revoke access.
Does it delete it from theirs as well?
Yep.
Really?
Yeah. And so, it's just one of those things where we're constantly making improvements, a lot of it due to feedback from customers. But yeah, that sharing waypoint is nice. I use it a lot for even just safety purposes.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm headed out this weekend. I'm going solo. Share one with my uncle who can, find me if needed.
Here's where I'm going.
Yeah, here's where I'm going. Here's a backup spot.
Yep.
So that a lot of whitetail hunters use it for even tree stands, right? Because you set up a tree stand, I come to your property the next morning trying to find the tree stand in the dark. I don't care how good directions you have,
Right.
It's not going to work. So you're going to blow deer out. It's just going to be a mess. So
go right at this bush, find this tree, hook a left.
In the dark, and don't scare all the deer in the field.
Right.
And so it's one of those things, for that application, you text me the waypoint, I tap on it, opens right up in my app. It's like I follow my phone in the dark and go exactly to that tree.
That's so cool.
So yeah, meetup spots, camp locations. Hey, we're going to camp here. You're not able to come for 2 days. We're not going to have service up there. Here's where we're going to be at. And if we're not there, here's a plan B, that kind of stuff. Even a couple years ago, I had a late season cow tag, and right before dark, like last light, shot a cow. And it was me and a buddy from work, and Zach Sandow from work also was nearby, and we had service. So we texted him a waypoint to where we were. There's no way that he could have found us without that waypoint. It was dark. The wind was blowing 40 miles an hour. It was like blizzarding. And
he came in and helped you pack
his
out.
headlamp came right up to exactly where we were. Otherwise, it would have been like, hiking 2 miles. There's going to be an opening. Hopefully you see it. Look up there and try and find our headlamps in the snowstorm.
Right.
So yeah, it's helpful.
It's almost like a life-saving aid.
Yeah, it can be for sure.
Just as much if you need a first aid kit, you better have OnX. And
yeah,
dude, that's so cool. You guys are now putting in the ability to take a picture, and add it and attach it to a waypoint. That way, you get an actual visual reference of what it looks like.
Yeah, so that one's cool. A lot of people use it for even taking a photo of a wallow. So not only am I going to mark a waypoint and name it wallow, but I'm going to take a picture of that wallow so I know what it looks like. Mountain peaks, that type of stuff. What's my view from here? So you can, with old waypoints, you can tap on it and tap add photo.
Okay.
With new waypoints, you can just add a photo while you're doing it. So.
Yeah. Well, dude, all this stuff is super, super helpful. I want to know more about this elk hunt. You made your plan, you used OnX, but take us through the hunt, man. Tell me the story.
Yeah.
How did it go down?
So yeah, the first day, we rolled up, and first day was, I don't want to say slow, because we were still hearing elk and seeing elk, and still way more action than what I would normally have on a first day of an elk hunt.
Right.
Normally. But yeah, we were in them on the first day. It's just one of those things with playing that cat and mouse and being super patient and waiting for the right time to make your move. We were glassing up, I think we glassed up like 4 or 5 bulls on the first day, but they just weren't in the right position. The wind was kind of shifty, and the way that the herd was going, there was no chance of us like getting around in front of them without getting winded or seen. I was like, okay, we'll just, we've got 5 days total. We'll sit back, watch them, be patient. Sooner or later, we'll try and pattern them, figure out, where they're feeding, where they're bedding, and get the wind right and get in front of them either in the morning or the afternoon. And it's one of those things too. Usually I'm hunting from sun up to sundown all day, and where, we just didn't want to pressure these elk. As I said, we were on private piece and didn't want to blow these elk off to the next chunk or so on and so forth. So it was a little bit different in that aspect, get out, hunt the morning, go back to camp, shoot the bow, take a nap if you want to.
Yep.
Yeah, so day one was eventful. We saw some really nice bulls, but just didn't get in on close to any of them. And then the second morning, we got in on them pretty good. Actually, they were kind of filtering by us, came by at probably 80 to 100 yards, and it just didn't quite work out. It was close. We thought we had the perfect setup, but it just didn't work out.
Did you knock an arrow?
Oh yeah.
You
There's
get to
an arrow
draw at all?
knock. No draw. But some excitement. We were getting closer. Your bulls are fired up.
The heart's starting to pound.
Oh
a
yeah,
little bit.
yeah. And just trying to take it all in. It was, like I said, a 5-day hunt. And it was day 2. And then actually the night before, to back up a little bit, we weren't really close to the herd, but kind of foreshadowing, not to spoil it, but the bull that I ended up getting an opportunity at, him and another bull fought the night before, and it was just crazy to experience. They were just going at it.
Did you get to watch it?
We watched a little bit of it. We mostly heard it,
Wow.
and then but we got a little bit glimpse of it, and it was just insane. It was, so the bull that I get an opportunity at later, he was kind of, I don't want to call him a satellite bull because he was a herd bull type bull, but he just wasn't with this herd particularly.
Right.
There was another bull with him, and the bull that I got a shot at, he came in and just stirred everything up, and he like challenged that bull. They fought, and then he took over the herd. So he was kind of following that herd around for the day that we had seen, and then that evening he kind of took over the herd. The bull that he beat then kind of became like a satellite bull, if you will. I hate calling those caliber of bulls satellite bulls, but I guess that's what he was.
Yeah, I totally get it. I ended up, I shot a beautiful bull elk in Western Washington, just total herd bull. And he was just destroyed on his front chest. And I was like, dude, there's a bull that's bigger than him that fit him up out here and was still jabbing him. I'm like,
it's nuts.
It's crazy.
But yeah, so the next night we had a really good idea of where these elk bedded. We watched them pretty closely in the morning. We could hear them up there bugling kind of where they stopped. And it wasn't where we could hunt, but we were pretty confident that they were going to come through. And so we got out there super early that day, pretty much just like hung out in the creek bottom the entire day, waiting for him to get up and making sure the wind was good, etc. And it was starting to get pretty dark, and I was getting a little nervous because they weren't coming out quite as early as what they usually were. But anyways, it started to get dark. Wind was right. We were just waiting for these elk to get up and start spotting them. And we decided to just like press up this drainage. So we used the app to look at the topo. Okay, if we get up here, we're going to be able to make 300-400 yards up on these elk pretty quick before, A, we're going to have to expose ourselves, or B, it's just, we're not going to be in the right spot. So we made the move and just kind of went for it. And so we crawl up there, and it's pretty open, as I said. Like, there's pockets of timber. The elk are in a pocket of timber, but other than that, we're pretty exposed. And so we got up to as close as we could, and I kind of just crawled up on a bank. There was sagebrush there, and so I kind of used like a big chunk of sagebrush as cover, and kind of sat there and called a little bit. Bulls were bugling at this point. There was one bull that was probably 100, 150 yards away, but I could never see him. There's just enough of a rise that he was just right over it, and it ended up being the bull that lost the fight the night before. And so he was just screaming, and it was just, I was just waiting for him to walk out. And, I was like, he sounds like a big bull. He's going to come out. It's going to be perfect. And he ended up was kind of skirting around and acting real weird. And I wasn't sure at that time it was that bull, but from getting his butt kicked the night before, he was just being a little timid and not coming to a call. But he skirted around, and then the bull the night before that won the fight started pushing his cows like perfect, like right by me. I saw him at like 100 yards out, and I could tell they were coming in a pretty good path. Arrow knocked, ready, started to get the little jitters.
Oh, yeah.
And lost sight of him, and the first cow popped up, and I ranged her, and she was probably like 60 yards, kept coming in. Then single file, another cow, another cow, another cow.
Here it goes.
And it's like, all right, this is going to be good. And so I ranged the trail that they're on, and it's like 40 yards on the nose from me. Like, perfect. They don't know where I'm at. Wind's perfect. See the bull step up, like at 60 yards or so, but following the string of cows. And so I'm getting ready, preparing 40-yard shot. I practice all summer. I'm super confident there. And the first cow turns, and she starts walking straight at me. Like straight at me. I don't know if she saw something and she got curious, or if she just decided that she wanted to turn and walk straight at me.
Like,
but
no.
Yeah, so this perfect plan, and this cow turns, she's walking just directly at me, and she gets to like 15 yards, still like kind of looking at me, kind of still walking toward me. And the bull at this point started trotting to like I think push her back in the herd a little bit, because the rest of the cows were still at 40.
Yeah.
And so he starts running straight at me too. And like they're both like, the cow's walking at me, looking at me, the bull's running straight at me, like trotting straight at me to try and like veer the cow back into the herd. So I'm like, okay, he's got to be 40, 30, 20, 18. He was getting closer and closer.
And were you at full draw already?
No. So I was ready, but I hadn't drawn yet. And I knew the second the cow had me pinned at that point. And I knew the second I went to draw or made any movement, that cow was going to bust. And so the bull's probably 18 yards, but still trotting toward me. And I just lift my bow ever so slightly and start to like put pressure on it. And the cow busted, so I drew right away. The bull kind of ran with her a little bit, but the guys behind me, Sam Everett was there taking photos for the hunt. And I think he kind of knew what was going on, and he started just cow calling like right away. And so the bull stopped broadside, slightly quartered away right at 40 yards where I ranged him, and I got a shot there. It was money. So
and the rest is history.
Yeah.
Dude, so thank goodness for good friends, huh?
Yeah, no kidding.
Holy smokes, man. That is incredible.
Yeah, it was awesome. So yeah, I mean, I, shot that bull, and it was a good hit right away, and it was just a relief, but it was surreal. Right after that, we had elk walking right by us. Sam came up, gave me a big hug, and we were just kind of, reminiscing a little bit. And we had a cow walk by us at like 5 yards. 2 other bulls come to like 5 to 8 yards from us, and we're just like sitting there taking it all in. It was just crazy. And then the bull that lost the fight the night before, as soon as I shot my bull, he ran up over the rise, and that bull within like 2 seconds was standing on the rise, looked at my bull, looked at the herd of cows, bugled, and ran right back down in the middle of them.
So just took him.
Yeah, it was crazy to experience that. The night before, my bull challenging that bull, winning, taking over the herd, and then immediately after I shot that bull, that bull just came right back in, like it was his herd again. And it was cool just to like watch elk behavior.
Dude, that's so crazy, and that's not something that many people get to see or experience. Yeah. Dude, that's so cool. Okay, I'm going to be posting a picture of this elk to go along with this episode. How can people get a hold of you, and also how do they find OnX?
Yeah, so OnX, I mean, we're on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, our website. We're pretty hard to miss if you type in OnX Hunt in a search engine. But OnX Hunt on Instagram, we're very active there. YouTube is a great place for the content that we run with our ambassadors, but also just video tutorials that Randy Newberg, e-scouting for elk, e-scouting for whitetails, that kind of information. Our website, onxmaps.com, we've got a ton of FAQs where it's a good resource for people to go to. If they're new, how do I do this? How do I do that? Kind of an all-encompassing tutorial on there. And yeah, it's, we're, like I said, we're pretty hard to miss if you type in OnX Hunt.
What's really interesting is how I meet a lot of OnX users that don't use it on their computer.
Yeah.
And as soon as they do, it's like, oh, dude, it's so much it advances their game
Yeah.
and their scouting ability that much more, because it's hard to just find stuff and be so detailed when you're just looking at a phone or an iPad or whatever. So all you listeners out there, check it out, but also on the computer to go along with your phone. How do guys get a hold of you? Where you got an Instagram account, don't you?
Yeah. So it's first, middle, last name, Dylan.hunter.Dowson.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for this episode. This has been awesome. Dylan, you are a champ. Thanks for talking with us today, and everyone, stay soulful. If you enjoyed today's podcast, I'd love it if you could go ahead and give this a rating as well as subscribe. Also, you can check us out on Instagram under the Soulful Hunter Podcast. Make sure to tag us in pictures and posts and use the hashtag Soulful Hunter. To find out more about the Soulful Hunter Podcast, go to soulfulhunter.com and be sure to follow the podcast, as we are going to be bringing you a lot of great information, insight, and changing lives through primal adventure. I look forward to connecting with you on the next episode. Stay tuned and stay soulful.